ActiveCampaign Forms. Love them. It's basically like an old-fashioned paper form. Someone filled out a form and that information gets put into ActiveCampaign. That's the simple version. They are the primary method for getting information about a contact into ActiveCampaign. If the contact does not exist already in ActiveCampaign, a contact will be created when the form is submitted. If the contact is already in ActiveCampaign, then the contact will be updated with the fresh information. And how ActiveCampaign knows which one to update, if it's Monkey here filling out the form, is always by what email address was entered into the form. So if Monkey here is already in ActiveCampaign with a different email address and they fill out another form and they use a different email address, ActiveCampaign can't tell that's the same dude, right? So it goes on the email address. When you create an ActiveCampaign form, it can have a title, so you can put text and images and all sorts of useful things on forms. So they can look quite lovely, or they can be just the fields where someone's going to put in the information. So they're really versatile because a form in ActiveCampaign can be made as like a standalone thing, so that if you're seeing just that ActiveCampaign form, it all makes sense. It's got a picture, it's got a name and a logo and all those things. Or it can be really stripped down and just have the bits where they're going to put their information in. And those stripped down ones are really useful when you want to embed something on your website, which is super easy to do with ActiveCampaign Forms because you can use the plugin if you're in WordPress. So ActiveCampaign fields, they're where the contact information gets stashed. You can drag any of your ActiveCampaign fields over onto the form from your selection of fields. And then once you've dragged the field over, you can edit what it says. So instead of just saying first name, which is the name of the field in ActiveCampaign, you can edit it so that it says, please enter your first name. And you can edit text that it shows inside there. I forget what this is called, prompt text. The words that you can see inside the field, you can edit as well. And that's a really nice way to inject some personality. So for example, in this one, the field is called email. You might say here, email address. And then in the prompt text, you might say, pick your best email address that you actually look at. So lots of opportunity to customize things. You can use all the different field types in here. It can be ones where they're entering a words or a full paragraph or a date, or it can be these radio button ones where they're allowed to choose one option, or a checkbox where you're asking them to tick something. You can also make certain fields required. You can edit the words that are on your submit button. You can change all the colors. And then the next thing is what happens after someone hits the submit button. All right. So there's some detail that we can set up in there. So ActiveCampaign gets the data. Okay. Whoever filled in that form, doesn't really matter. It could be you filling out a form and entering someone else's email address. You can do that too. The campaign is going to carry out some actions and you get a whole load of settings that you can specify for what is ActiveCampaign going to do with this form. So one of the big ones is you can either display a thank you message, like thank you for submitting this form. Bit boring, but does the job. Or it can redirect them to a particular page or URL. It doesn't have to be on your website. It could be anywhere. You can enter any URL to send them off to when you submit the form. Really good for sending them to a thank you page. You can specify list actions. Now, one thing that's really important to know here is that the default thing there is that it sets it to a double opt-in. That's the thing where they then have to go and confirm that they want to be added to the list. And in many scenarios where I use a form with ActiveCampaign, I want a list ad, but I don't want a double opt-in. And you have to turn that off in the settings for each list action on each form. That's my little tip for you. You can have it add tags, super useful. You can have it send an email. Now, this email here does not go to the contact, the person who entered the information. It's more like a notification email that can go to anyone you like. So if you've got someone in your organization who needs to know every time a certain form is submitted, you can do that in the form settings. It means you don't have to build an automation. You can just have it send an email to so-and-so every time this form is submitted. There's also some opportunity there involving deal fields. It's not massively used, but just so you know about it. Here's the best thing about ActiveCampaign and forms. ActiveCampaign already knows when someone submits a form. I see a lot of people putting a tag on that says, submitted form, blah-de-blah, my lovely form. You don't need to do that because ActiveCampaign already knows, and it holds that in the contact activity record for the contact that filled out the form. Great. So forms, super useful for getting information into or updating information on your ActiveCampaign contacts, be aware that if they enter new information in those fields, it's going to overwrite whatever they had in there before. So the ActiveCampaign built-in forms are fantastic. They're included in your accounts. There's no extra cost. There's no crazy integration stuff to deal with. They are easy. They are really reliable. They are tracked by ActiveCampaign automatically. And because they're like baked into ActiveCampaign, they're just the most reliable form you can use within your ActiveCampaign ecosystem. Great. Tell me what you're doing with forms in the comments. All right. Cheers. Bye.